Hello, I'm Collin Floyd, and today we're going to be talking about session 6 of the JA Career Success Modules, Process Engineer, Gibbs Die Casting. Last session, we talked about working on work priorities. This session we're going to be talking about how to know who's hiring and what jobs are high growth in our areas, just in general. So, when you're exploring career options, what are you good at doing for a living? So an example of personally what I'm good at doing for a living is things that relate to technology and using computers. I'm pretty computer savvy. So process engineering was a pretty clear step for me, and just engineering in general. So also, we need to consider what we're going to enjoy doing for a living. Growing up, I did a lot of physical stuff. I played football, did track, stuff like that. So I like being outdoors. So when I looked for a job initially, working at Gibbs seemed like a good idea because it was physically intensive and the work paid really well, and seemed like it'd be really engaging and had a lot of opportunities for me if I wanted to advance and do other things in the future. Case in point, ended up being a manager and eventually an engineer. So when I looked at what I wanted to do, Gibbs really worked out for me. So understanding what you have interest in doing before you go looking for a job is also important. That's not always going to be the case. Sometimes you're just going to find a job to get a job. But when we pick jobs that align to our interests more, we're more likely to be successful in it. So that's another point. And then we also want to understand what jobs are likely to be available. So understanding the job outlook at the time. My point, for instance, when I first graduated, way back when, whenever that was, coal was a big thing. We had a lot of coal mines around here, and that seemed like a reasonable thing to do. Healthcare is a big thing. Healthcare is always a big thing. We had a lot of nurses that were in need at the time. They needed nurses and people that were interested in being in the medical field, so there were a lot of programs geared towards that. And then finally, manufacturing. Toyota was new in the area. Gibbs has always been around here. So I knew what things, if I wanted to stay in this area, were going to be things that I could do. So knowing where you want to be at after you graduate and what you want to do, as well as where you want to do it, are things that you need to keep in mind whenever looking for a job in the future. Knowing who's hiring. You need to explore as many options as you can now, so that when it comes time to commit to a career path, you have as much information as possible, gearing yourself to know what's out there. It changes from year to year. What may be in demand right now may not be in demand next week, or the year following that. I went to school, and growing up, I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to be a psychiatrist. These are things that I wanted to be growing up, but they weren't things that seemed really possible for me straight out of high school. When you're young, it seems like you can do everything, but as you get older, you realize that there's a lot of things that doing the things that we want to do entail, and understanding what those things are as early as possible is very helpful. So there are two things you need to do to have some control over the type of work you will do as an adult. One, you need to graduate from high school to keep the most options available. And two, you need to research, and research a lot. Explore careers, career requirements, and salaries. Be aware of what these things are. You may want to do something that you find really interesting, but knowing if you have the possibility to do it in the area and if it pays well are two really important things. Being a game designer, that's something else that I found interesting growing up. There's not a lot of possibilities for that around here, and even then, with game design, getting in, the barriers to entry are kind of high. There's a lot to do with that, what school you go to, and who you know, and what opportunities are out there, and then hoping that it pays well is a whole nother thing. Just make sure you do your research and see how open the careers that you are interested in are and what they require of you. And if you're willing to do both of those, more power to you, and you know what you need to do. So be aware of those. Skills. Now, remember in the career hunt, the three most important areas to explore: your skills, interests, and job outlook. So we're going to take a look at those. So skills. Skills are what you're good at. Each job that you have requires specific knowledge and abilities. Generally, there are two ways to gain skills, either through learning it, education, or being trained in it, training experience. In my case, I hadn't done a whole lot of engineering before I became a process engineer. I'd done a lot of things that were associated with it, but the technical aspects were things that I had to learn once I got into the department that I'm in right now. And each job's going to be different. You need to know the baseline things out the gate, and that's what technical schools and post-secondaries are all good for. Each job you go to is going to be different, and they're going to teach you what you need to do on the hire forms and what those organizations need specifically once you get there. It's your job to learn the basic stuff before you get into it. That's why you need to kind of have the stuff squared out before you get there. So be aware of that too. And employers will look at applicants' specific education and experience when deciding who to hire. Where you went to school at, that comes up again. If you want to be a doctor, you can't just go to the Hill and then turn around and say, hey, I have credits from here. I'm interested in doing that. There's all kinds of steps that are really important that you have to follow before you get to that point. So being aware of those and doing education, doing research on what schools are the best ones to go to in order to be noticed for the careers that you're interested in are super important also. It's almost a requirement for some jobs. If you want to get into safety, we have a lot of safety guys out at Gibbs. So most of those, the guys that end up getting really good money and paid well, for the most part, have all worked at Murray. Murray has a really good technical program for safety and whatnot. And they hire and they have a lot of people that go out and get paid really well upon graduation. So understanding what schools specialize at what and what schools are popular for getting hired is good also. Okay, so interests. Your skills can be the same as your interests, but not always. Just because you're good at doing something doesn't mean you enjoy it. You need to be sure to look at careers that combine your skills and your interests. So we need to ask ourselves, what do you enjoy doing? In my case, I enjoy gaming. I enjoy doing photography, taking pictures and whatnot. I enjoy traveling. When looking for a job, these are things that I need to keep in mind, but they don't necessarily correlate with what I end up doing. So there's process engineering. I'm good with computer, which kind of coincides with gaming, I guess, to some degree. But there are a lot of aspects to my job that have absolutely nothing to do with my interests, which also in some cases is a good thing. When you have things that you enjoy doing, when you start doing them for money, it can ruin them, in my opinion. So know what you like and having a happy medium between doing what you like and having it be separate from what you like also, I think is important. So why is it important to consider interest when choosing a career? If you're doing something that you absolutely hate, let's say, in my case, I hate cold weather. If I found myself deep sea fishing in Alaska, probably wouldn't be something I enjoy doing. I'm not much of a swimmer either, so doing that in a really cold area, being out at sea for long periods of time, I'm a fairly social person, but I know it can get lonesome out there too. That wouldn't be a thing that coincided with my interests, and that means that in all likelihood, I wouldn't be very good at it, and it wouldn't be something that I did for a long time, which is also a bad thing. So, we want to do things that set us up for success, as they say. And are your skills the same as your interests? Not always. For one, like I said earlier, I like photography. As a process engineer, I don't do that very often. Every now and then, I might do some to record one of the processes that we're doing, but overall, there's nothing very artistic to it, So, while interests are important, there are other things to keep in mind also, such as your skills. Skills are very important also. So, So, job outlook. When choosing a career, explore industries with many job openings expected in the future. These are called high growth jobs. Some of those include software engineers, construction workers, registered nurses, electricians, and plumbers. Low growth jobs, ones that aren't happening very often or expected to grow in the future, include postal service clerks, office receptionists, floor designers, and newspaper reporters. A lot of stuff's happening online with those now, and floor designers, flyers, and a lot of stuff like those are all being contracted out by people that are able to do them en masse through other places and have them shipped to places. So being good at that is not necessarily a hard thing to do, but it's hard to get hired doing it. So if you're looking at making money and doing it fairly quickly and making a lot of it, it's in your best interest to find a high growth job. It's important to know which of those jobs are going to be in demand in the future so you can make an informed decision about whether to invest in that career path. The last thing that you want to do is spend years upon years learning stuff for a job that isn't one that you can get, or one that doesn't pay very well that you've put a lot of money into and a lot of time. I know people have done that, spent years upon years learning things and getting degrees that don't really get them into the jobs that they wanted because they're so selective on the people and jobs that are out there. Finally, some careers may seem glamorous or interesting, but openings may be limited and jobs difficult to get. For example, influencers, professional athletes, and actors. Those are all great paying jobs, but there's like 0.001% of people that even get them. And your chances are really low. So unless you're really interested in focusing on the time it takes to get those and really have the background to do it, and you can do it, you want to pick something else to do, in my opinion. All right, so research. Research is super important. Research various jobs to understand what will be necessary to be successful. Research the job outlook in advance because it can vary greatly from profession to profession. Another great source is the Bureau of Labor Statistics at the link there below for detailed information on many jobs, including their outlook and educational requirements. That's where you want to look at. It's a great resource. You should check it out. So finally, in review, you need to consider your skills, interest, and the job outlook before choosing your profession. Maintain a list of jobs you come across that match your interest and skills so you can research them. And in the next session, we'll explore personal brand and how to market yourself to future employers. And now we're going to do an activity. That's going to help you with career planning. See you next time.